So good morning, everyone. My name is Laurent Thomas. I'm an application engineer, data scientist at Acquifer. So I was actually doing my PhD with them a few years ago, a bit like Sankir now. And I stayed after the PhD, and I'm for about a year now working with them. So part of my job is to do software development, so in Fiji, but also like internal software development at Acquifer. And so in the past year, I was working on this update site for Fiji, which is basically a collection of tools and like general application tools, like you have image processing, but also visualization and batch processing, mostly for imaging machine dataset. And the idea was to have like a collection of tools which are making a bit your life easy when working with imaging machine dataset in Fiji. So as I heard, like not all of you are working with imaging machine datasets, so it's going to be mostly for these people working with the IM. So for those who are not familiar with the IM, so the way we store the data from the microscope is just a collection of single image file, and each image file is one plane. So it has advantages and drawbacks, let's say, but one advantage is like you can very easily copy part of your data set and filter the files based on the file name and so on. And so as you can see, like the file name actually also contains metadata about the acquisition. So you can see actually what well it corresponds to, what channel, so this CO stands for color. And this SL also it stands for the Z slice. So one actually implication of that is like you should not rename the file name, otherwise you lose the metadata. So for this presentation, I will mostly focus on a subset of the tools which are available on the update site, the one under batch and Hyperstack, which are quite versatile, but also a bit more, let's say, complex, so I want to spend a bit more time on them. And one thing you should know also, so the imaging machine we had, I think we have still here at Bioquant 2 version, right, the IMO 3 and IMO 4. So the tools are available for both the version, and the difference is the file name. So the IMO 4 starts with this dash and then the well ID, and the IMO 3 starts with this WE for well, which means you have to use actually if you have IMO 3 dataset, you should just go under this legacy menu, and you will find the same plugin with just this IMO 3 suffix, let's say. So for the rest of the demo, I'm just going to focus on IMO 4, but it's really just the same for IMO 3. As I say, it's just the file name changing. So for this batch plugin, the first thing, before I start with the actual demo, to know is that all the plugins have pretty much the same graphical user interface. So on the left panel, it's the part that is common, and that's where you can select the well you want to use. So basically the image plane for this well, so including all the Z slice, all the time points, and the channels. So that's where you do that. So first you can basically input what data set you want to work on. Then you can select some wells or all of them, and eventually specify some specific dimension. Let's say you want to use only part of the Z slice or part of the channel. So as I said, left panel come on to all plugins, and then right panel will be specific to the plugin you select. So in this case, it's the batch copy, I think, so it's very simple. It's going to copy all the images for the well you select or the full data set. So I'm going to show you actually on a real data set, but maybe motivation why a batch copy plugin, because you can basically do it in Windows. It's just like if you go back to the actual file list, so let's say this data set here, so we have about 162 images, as you can see here. And so it's really all the wells, so like here you see A1, but if I go on, it goes until A12, so we have basically all row A. And we have multiple channel, I think, so we have this CO4, that's the fluorescent channel, and CO3, and also a Z stack. So copying the full dataset, that's fine, but let's say now you just want the middle slice, or you just want channel 3 for all the wells. Then it's getting a bit complicated. You will have to click one by one or do some kind of shift selection. So with this batch copy, it's actually much simpler to do that, so I'm going to show you right now. So I distributed the installation instructions, so you can actually install the Fiji update site on any Fiji installation. So Mac also works. And once you have it installed, you have this Acquifer menu popping up with different menus. And as I said, I'm going to focus on this batch and Hyperstack. So the only difference between batch and Hyperstack is just batch, we work really on the single image file, and then Hyperstack, we just group them first into a Hyperstack or a multi-dimensional image, with the sliders, and then we can do stuff with it. So I'm going to start with the batch one, which are simpler. So let's go on with batch copy. So you recognize the graphical user interface. I'm just going to make sure I'm using this dataset and not another one. So of course you can click the browse button, but since I was already in the file browser. Okay, so you see now when I pasted the path, the interface was updated actually with the dimension available in this dataset. So we have only one supposition for every well. So sometimes, when you image a well, you can do multiple supposition. 2 channel and 20Z slice. Actually, I can maybe show you first the data. It looks like it's not, for me, it's kind of secondary, just data sets, but it's kind of nice. So these are zebrafish, and I said there are 2 fluorescent channel and a Z stack. So now I'm going through the Z stack. This is then another one, and so on. Okay. So let's say now I want only to copy for every well only one of the 2 fluorescent channels. Let's say if you want to move it to another workstation, or you want to put it on a USB stick, for instance. So we can do that pretty easily. So we can first check what's available in this directory. So as you see, there is from about, there's not full row A1. There are actually 4 wells from row A. And then, so now I selected all the wells which are available there. I could also, let's say, just go for A1, for instance, or let's keep A1 and A12 for the sake of the example. So these fields here are if you want to select specific dimensions. So if I would not put anything, it will just copy all what's available for A1 and A12. If you want now, so the channels 3 and 4 are the channel index. So if we would just want channel 3, then I just enter 3. If I would have more than 2 channels, let's say channels 3, 4, and 6, which is usually bright field, I could also put a comma like 3, 6 would take the only channels 3 and 6. For the dead slice, let's say we want to reduce the data, let's say, and let's consider maybe in the dead stack, some of them were out of focus, the slice, so we can reduce and take maybe 10 to 15. So to do so, you can enter a range, you just separate with a dash. Okay, and then the output directory, so I put it in my download folder, so it's easy to find. There is an option then if you want to copy the log folder, so it's created at the acquisition time by the acquisition software. It contains some metadata about the acquisition. And if you want to visualize the data set after in the place viewer, which is the software we use for visualization, the other software from Acquifer, you would need this log directory. In this case, just for the sake of the example, I won't copy it. So let's OK that. So you saw like a very quick progress bar, so because it was very few image plane, but if you have a larger data set, then you would see in real time how much it progressed. And then if I go to my download directory, output copy, so you see we had A1 and A12, only channel 3 and channel 10 to 15, right? So that was much simpler than going through the file and selecting each of them. So that was the first plugin, very, I would say, rather simple, but quite handy. Another one which I like, it's the batch converter. So it's kind of a similar idea. We're also going to copy the data, but we're also going to do some transformation. So these plugins give you different options for the transformation. You can crop all the image, and you can rescale. So if you want to do binning, let's say, or downscale, this is also going to save you actually some disk space. And you can also convert it to another format, let's say PNG or JPEG, if you want to include it into a PowerPoint or a figure. But for that, I want to use another dataset because I want to show you actually this batch cropping. So I'm going to go back here. No, actually, it's in the slide. There we go. So I'm going to use Valerio's dataset. So it's this one. It's a time lapse with 2 channels. But what's actually interesting for me is that if we look at the data. Okay, if we look at the data, these are like typically pictures you would have if you use the orientation tools that we have for the imaging machine. So these are zebrafish larvae, and they're oriented in a agarose gel. So they have all rather similar orientation, and they're pretty much in the middle of the well. So they're either vertically like this or more usually horizontal. For some reason, I have them vertical, but the idea is the same. So again, I can go through the data. It's a time lapse. And there are 2 channels, that's why there's this flickering. But yeah, what's important for me to show you for this use case is that, as I said, they're vertical. So if I draw a rectangular region of interest like this, I'm pretty sure that I'm going to have all the image I want, all the samples. The data on the sides I can discard, that's just background, and that's going to save me actually a lot of data. If you consider that's about 2/3 of the image, which is not useful, so it's going to, if you multiply by the number of images, you reduce the size of the dataset by 2/3. So how to do this batch cropping? You draw a region of interest. You can press T, which is going to add this region of interest to the RI manager in Fiji or ImageJ. You can select it then, and then you go to More and Save. This gives you the ROI file that you can reuse. Then you can open it back actually in the RI manager. So yeah, let's put it here. I was playing yesterday cropping. Do you want to replace it? Yes. So now we can actually close the image. I just needed the region of interest. And we can go back to our plugin. So actually, if you do this, let's say you have multiple data sets, you can reuse the same region of interest all the time. You don't need to draw one every time you start the plugin. So then let's go to batch converter. Yeah, I need to update then the data set, so I could again browse, but since I'm already in the directory, I'm gonna again copy. Okay, so it's kind of interactive, so you know, like now the path is empty, so the plugin is like, give me some data, please. That's all it's saying. Okay, so you see now again the fields are updated. We have 2 channels. Max Z is saying 5. Actually, there is only a single slice, which was slice 5. So, but yeah, if you know your data, and it's a time lapse. So I'm gonna then remove these. And so we can actually crop pretty much everything. Maybe I will just keep to time point 1 because actually it's not really important here. And let's take everything that's there. Yeah, it's okay. So then crop with ROI, if you want to do it, and give it the ROI file. So I see, yeah, that's correct, the path. Well, let's just double check. Cropping ROI. Scale factor, so as I said, you can either increase the size or reduce the size. Usually we rather reduce, otherwise you're going to increase the data, but if you want, I don't know, for some reason, higher resolution or something, you can also do it. So if you want to downscale, you just use a factor below 1. You know, it's like multiplying the scale. So if I put 0.5, it's going to reduce by 2 the width and the height. If I put 2, it's going to increase by 2 the width and the height. I'm just going to not change the scale, so just put 1. Then I don't need to actually explain this interpolation since it's only for scaling. And I'm going to stick to TIFF. I'll put directory. Again, you can select some directory, but if you don't mention anything, by default the plugin will create a directory converted, that's what I explained here, in the original dataset directory. So let's do that. Okay, it finished. I'm gonna go there. So now the directory did not appear, but it's just like some Windows stuff. You just Windows issue, you just refresh the directory, and now you see this converted directory. And now you see already from the Windows preview that they're all cropped to this rectangle. So I mean, we can check if you want, but I think you can already pretty well see. So then the data is unchanged, just cropped, right? I didn't change the scale, I didn't change the format, so it's still a 16-bit TIFF. Okay. So that's all I wanted to say about the batch converter. Let me, oh no, that's images, not the one I want. Let me check my slide. Did I put any? Oh yeah, the batch process image. Okay. Any questions so far? Okay. So I just continue, right? You're not lost? Fine. Yeah?
Maybe. So for this raw cropping, do we use basically whatever is implemented already in Fiji?
Yes.
So how it will look like if one would use a macro recording?
So in the...
So if, for example, one would like to add some extra level on top of this batch processing,
yes,
use a macro recorder with this batch converter.
So the plugins, most of the plugins are macro recordable. So basically you would get the macro recorded command with the path of the RI. Actually, I think I can show you. And what you would have to update then is the path to your directory. So where is this? At the end, I think, here. Yes. So this is not a plugin, but the idea would be the same. You get rather long command. But then what would be important for you if you want to crop another dataset is to change this directory variable. So it's working like the other macro recording thingy. You know, you have to like do this kind of a string sticking together or concatenation. And yeah, the rest would be pretty similar. The RI path would not change. And yeah, that's it. So also what I didn't mention in this graphical user interface, for the well selection, if you select everything, so in any of these batch plugins, if you select everything, and some wells are not actually there, it's not going to crash. It's just going to skip them. And the reason I did that is actually for this macro recording, because sometimes in datasets, you would have maybe row A, another dataset, you have row B. So if you would have to change the recorded macro command for both datasets, that's quite annoying. But then if you have dataset for which you know you don't have the same wells, column, rows, just select everything and it's going to work. You will get a very long command because it's going to appear all the wells, but it actually works. And with this macro recording also, that gives you the possibility to do some stuff before and after the batch plugin is executed, so that sometimes that can be useful. I don't know if you need to create a directory, stuff like that, you can kind of automate also this kind of task. So one other stuff, so this converter is nice, you can do scaling, cropping, conversion, but maybe you want to do other stuff with your single files. You want to do some processing, so you can actually also do that. So let's go here again, and it's called batch process images. And then there are two of them, one is macro, one is script. So I'm going to start with the macro. So again, kind of similar interface. And now on the right side, you see we have kind of this text field, free text field. And there you can enter a custom macro that's going to be executed for every single file. That's kind of matching the selection on the left. So let me show you then how this is going to work. I'm going to use maybe... Yeah, I'm going to use back the other data set. I think it's a bit nicer. No, it doesn't matter, actually. Okay. Let's just save time. So let's go. Yeah, we can select everything again. And maybe just going to process the bright field. So I know it's channel 6. So now what it's going to do, also maybe time point 1, otherwise it's going to be long. It's going to give me all the bright field channel for every well and the first time point only. So it's going to start with A1, bright field channel, execute macro. Then A2, bright field channel, execute macro. And so the macro actually, what it's receiving, it's not an image, it's a file. Because sometimes you might do stuff which are not actually related to image processing. You just maybe want again to copy data or stuff like that. So for this, you don't need to open the image. So here I'm going to show you actually how to open an image if you need, but you don't have to. So I'll show you then in a second example where I'm just really extracting metadata from the file name. That's another possibility. So this macro, so it's editable again. And the idea is that you can take a macro that you have in the script editor from ImageJ, which has this nicer color coding because now it's not super readable in black and white, and paste it there. You can also, if you have a macro as a file, you can also give it the path and click this load macro, and it's going to automatically load it for you. So here a short example. I'm basically recovering the file path of the image that this batch plugin is giving to the macro with this get argument. Then I'm opening the image and doing some processing after that. So I'm going to do a min filter to reduce the noise, fine edge, and then enhance contrast so we actually see the result. And for each image, I'm going to wait 2 seconds before closing, otherwise we just won't see it. It's going to go very quick. So let's try that. Okay, so you see image opening, A1, the processing happening, and then it's being closed. And it's going to go on for all the well I selected, so I think A12, and then it's going to finish. So for the sake of the example here, I'm just closing the image after that. But of course, you can save the image in your macro. You have this save as or something like that. If you realize actually that's not what you wanted to do, you can stop the execution. You just press escape. Because if let's say now I didn't put time point 1, but all the time lapse, the 15 time point, and you're gonna wait, I don't know, 2 seconds waiting for each frame multiplied by I don't know how many image planes. So yeah, escape's gonna stop it. Right, so you can also, in your macro, there is this command set batch mode true, which is also going to actually speed up the analysis because it's going to skip the display. Here, for the sake of the example, I was displaying and also waiting 2 seconds so we actually see the stuff. But yeah, if you want to have something more efficient, you can have this small command set batch mode true. You can comment it initially to see if it works, and then it's working, you can have this set batch mode, and then it's going to be really quick. So another example I have, I know it's not super intuitive, writing this macro, so I put some examples that you can copy paste in the tool. So they are under examples, batch, process, images, macro, and any of these. So I show you now this fine edge more or less, and now I want to show you this metadata table. So this example is just it's not gonna open the image. It's just gonna extract metadata from the file name. So actually, you might wonder why my script editor is black. It's just a new update of the script editor. You can go in the option. Just nicer for the eyes, I found. At least if you spend a lot of time. So in this example, I'm getting again the file path. Then extracting the file name of the image, so I'm getting rid of this directory path. And then from the file name, we can extract the metadata with custom comments, which are also actually shipped by the update site. These are like Acquifer custom macro comment. And they all start with this ext.im. And so you can call this command. The only condition is like you have to have this first kind of command in your script, this run Acquifer IMO4 extension. So basically you open the example, copy paste it. And maybe you have seen it for other extension because actually this ext is common to all kind of extension in image macro. And so actually if you want to just know what's available as command, you can just type this ext and you see the code completion appearing, and all of them that start with IM are actually our stuff. So these are all kind of information you can recover from the file name. So pixel size, position of the objective along X, Y, and D, temperature of the sample, time point. And as you see, let's say now I'm going to go for time point, is taking the image name. So that's the input, and the output is going to be time point. So in this image macro language, it's a bit weird actually. So you have multiple arguments, some are inputs and some are outputs. So it's not, in other programming language, you would have sometime on the left rather time point equal and just the image name, but in image macro, that's how it is. Okay. So if you're curious, I have a full example on extracting metadata from image name under example macro parse metadata from file name. But now I want to show you how you can use that in this batch thingy. So let's just copy paste this part. Go back to the batch process images and replace this part. Okay. So it's not very nice, you know, like the comment get like moved around, but it works in theory. So this this gonna open a table. Yeah, okay. It was very quick. So now, as I told you, we're not opening image. We just work on the file level. And what it did is like for every file it was given by the plugin, it parsed the metadata and wrote it to a result table. So the first column was just the file path, and the other column are the metadata that were extracted. So for each of them, I was extracting the whale, the time point, the z-index, and the channel. All right, so I think that's all I wanted to show for the batch macro. There is also a batch script, which is very similar, except that instead of putting a macro, well, you can also there put a macro file. So here you put the file actually on disk. You can put a macro file, but you can put actually any other script, like Groovy, Jython, JavaScript supported by Fiji. Yeah, so there's like only a small requirement on how the script should start. You know, it should have this line hashtag add file image file. That's how it's getting the file from the plugin. But I would assume not many people are doing this kind of scripting rather macro, so I'm not going to detail. Also, if you're a bit puzzled, like with a particular plugin, you can always click this help button. That's going to take you to the website of Acquifer with some documentation specific for this plugin. There are also some documentation, generic documentation in these menus, which are also links to documentation pages. Okay. So I think we're done with the first half, let's say, with these batch files. Now I'm going to continue with the Hyperstack ones, if there is no question until now. No? Okay. So the Hyperstack is a bit more powerful, let's say, or kind of nicer, or on a day-to-day basis, maybe also more useful. So as you know, like I have just seen it in the dataset for A1, let's say you had multiple image plane. So it's quite nice to see them as a hyperstack, you know, with a slider. So this is the purpose of this particular plugin, make hyperstack. And let me just check some NAS data. Yeah, we're gonna go for another one. I want to take a Z-stack. Yes, Hyperstack Maker. So I'm gonna take this one. Yep. Okay. Again, so complaining, yeah. Okay, so so this one, yeah, 20 slices and one time point. And what's there? Okay. So for the sake of the example, I'm going to display only 2 of them. And so, simple option on the right, just display the hyperstacks. That's that's what we're going to do. And you also have the option to automatically do a projection, a Z projection. If you have a Z stack, if you have other dimension, let's say you have a single dead slice but a time lapse, it's going to then project the time dimension. But now I'm having a Z stack, so it's going to project the Z dimension. And let's do average projection. So what it's going to do? For every well, take all the planes available, put them in a hyperstack, project, next well, hyperstack, project, and always going to display to you. So this one you should not, well you can, but it's going to be just a lot of image window, select too many wells, because it's just going to crowd the screen. But it's not a problem actually, it's in terms of speed, it's using this virtual stack, I don't know if you heard about it, so normally it's quite fast. Okay, so I selected 2 wells, A4 and A1. And so now we're looking at A4, okay. So on the left, we have the hyperstack. So you see we have 2 sliders, the one for the channel and one for the Z stack, okay. And on the right side, we have its projection. And this time we have only 1 slider because it projected the Z dimension. So that's the average projection for each channel. Yeah, exactly. So that's pretty neat, and that's the same for A1. And the idea of the plugin is then, well, here's just basically visualization, but again, it's macro recordable, so you could have additional operation on this hyperstack. Maybe one word about the image visualization. You can customize it under settings. you can change, for instance, the default lookup table. So now we are looking at channels 3 and 4, I think. So 3 is this blue, cyan hot, and 4 is red, but I could change it and put yellow. And then the next time I'm gonna run the plugin, then the blue will be replaced by yellow. Okay, so let's rerun it. So you saw quickly this yellow stuff. So it's more like for aesthetics, but kind of useful. And another setting which I also find useful is the way the channel are shown. You can either have this one lookup table, you know, like separately, but you can have an overlay directly. So this is in image display. So the two other stuff, this was like for the size of the window. I'm not sure if it's working. Like, it was depending on the image version, stuff like that. So I'm not going to explain about it. But this one, Hyperstack display mode. So now we're using this color. Grayscale is not really interesting. Actually, it's going to just show all channel in gray. But composite is quite nice. It's just going to make an overlay for you automatically. So if we redo it. Yeah, so now it's appearing black. It's just like you just need to auto scale the display. So you press the Shift C. And so now, if you slide through the channel, you see like the two are shown together. And then if you want to adjust the contrast, you have to position the slider on which channel you want to adjust the contrast. So now I'm on the yellow channel. So you're going to play now on the contrast of the yellow. And if I change the slider to the red one, then I'm going to play with the red. Okay. So I think red and yellow was not super nice actually as an overlay. The blue-red was better, but yeah, I think you get the idea. So this is applied then to also the projection, this composite view. So I guess, you know, if you have localization, stuff like that, it's quite handy. Yeah, so I was saying you can also execute, similarly to this batch process images, you can execute a macro for each hyperstack. So that's what I'm going to do here. And this is, yeah, okay. So now it kind of grew a bit bigger because you have the previous option of, you know, making the hyperstack, the projection, and then execute a macro. So for this one, what's important to know is that just like in ImageJ, Fiji in general, the macro is always executed on the currently active window. So if you display both the stack and the projection is the one that comes after, so the macro will be executed on the projection. So what I advise is to not display both. You know, if you want just to process the hyperstack, only display hyperstack. If you want to project the stack, only display the stack. There's a trick also if you want to display both. I think I explained it in one of the examples, because the plugin is actually also giving the name of the image window, so you can actually also actively select the window based on the name. So for this specific case, I'm going to just display the hyperstack and run some detection. Yeah.
Can I ask, what's going to happen with this dataset if you select display stack? I mean, it has two channels. We will then open two stacks independently?
If you want to process with the macro the one specific channel, let's say out of the two that are going to be displayed, or?
Yeah, so, well, the difference between hyperstack and stack for me is only whether you have like a next dimension, right?
Yes.
So now let's assume you have a data where you have this next dimension, but you choose to display it as stack. To open what it will do.
Okay, maybe the name is confusing. So by display stack is display the hyperstack.
Okay, and if you don't select it, what it will do?
If you don't select anything, it's not going to display anything. Let's say you could only save the projection, or you can, you can only save the projection, for instance. But for this specific macro, you know, the batch process macro, you need to display one of the two, because you cannot actually run a macro without displaying the image. Like having the image somehow in memory, not being displayed, that's possible in some use case.
One of the two, one of what?
One of the hyperstack or the projection.
What's projection?
Projection is the Z projection or the time-lapse projection. So yeah, you can then decide which one of these hyperstack or projection you want to process. So for this one, I'm going to process the hyperstack. And again, like kind of this edge detection. And also like one detail, but that's going to change probably in the future because it's a bit confusing. So this hyperstack stuff, it's fast at displaying because it's using a functionality of image A, which is called virtual stacks, which is denoted with this V. Unfortunately, these virtual stacks have kind of limited compatibility with some macro. So macro, like you will process, you will see your stuff, but then if you go back to your slice, it's going to reload the data from disk, so you lose your change. So if you want to have this batch process macro to work correctly, you should most of the time duplicate the virtual stack to a normal stack and then process the macro. That's why I put it here in the first line. And it's also explained actually in the graphical interface, this reminder message here. But I think I will change it in the future and make a tick box use virtual stack. And if you don't tick it by default, it's just going to load everything in data. It's going to be a bit slower, but I think you don't have to worry about putting this run duplicate. So that's actually we're going to see it. You're going to see the image being duplicated and then being processed. And then same example than before, basically doing edge detection and waiting 2 seconds, closing the data. Yes, I'm just making sure that's the correct data. Yeah, it's fine. So duplicating and then doing the processing, yeah. So that's the edge map, basically, with a kind of custom lookup table. And so actually here I didn't check if it's going to process both channel or one at a time. So I put the option stack, so this you have to play a bit around. I mean, usually you process channels separately. So you could, in your macro, split the channel, process one channel in this way, process the other channel in this way, stuff like that. So again, for this one, you have an option for script. Again, same mechanism, you give it a script file in any scripting language. And so I'm almost done. Last plugin I want to show you, this plate Montage Maker, which is actually very similar to the plate viewer in the Acquifer plate viewer. Just going to give you an overview of your data set. So for that, I'd need another data set. Plate overview, okay. And yep, Hyperstack, plate Montage Maker. Okay. So this one is pretty much the full plate, just missing row G and single channel, and it says max Z slice 15, but actually it's again like a special case. I have a single slice which corresponds to slice 15 in the data set. But I just took a fraction of original data set. So let's run that. Okay, so you got the idea. So you get your plate layout. For the row that's missing, it's just going to fill with black. And if you have multiple channels and time point, you're going to also get a slider. In this case, we just had one dimension. So one information that's quite in the one settings for this plugin is the downscaling factor that you want to use. So let me just explain. So now this downscaling factor is how much you want to reduce individual well image. So the higher this downscaling, the lower the quality, but the faster it's going to be, basically. And yes, what else? So yeah, if you zoom, obviously it's going to be more pixelized than the original data set. But yeah, again, it's just for an overview, so we cannot sacrifice.
I have one question. Are you planning to implement it such that it will actually not have this black line, but basically see, okay, it is 12 valves, so you can do, I don't know, 6 times 2 or 3 times 4?
Yes and no, because I want to respect the plate layout, kind of, because like you can go back to your data and say, okay, that's really like A2, something like that.
What I'm doing, I'm adding basically the well number on the image as a label.
Ah, yeah, true, I could do that. a bit.
For the paper, actually,
Yes, yes.
what I had to do, right? I have to say, this is just, it looks cool, but we want
Yes.
to line it even looks cool as well.
Yes. So the other option is to use, actually it's not functional now because I did some, yeah, I need to correct it basically. It's use this combined hyperstack. And combined hyperstack is very similar. First, you have to open the hyperstack you want to kind of tile. And then you can tell him like how many rows and column. And it's gonna, there won't be any black area.
Okay.
And I think the order is gonna arrange them is the order they're open, something like that. I'm not sure, it's Joran did this plugin, so, but yeah, that's an idea I'm gonna take and think about it. Actually,
Also possible after you did this batch cropping to then also make this like Montage Maker like a file, or does it have to be the original?
it should work,
Okay.
yes. As long as you don't rename the data. I have to check actually if I have a condition on the file format.
Because maybe you want sometimes to check if the cropping looks nice and
Yes, yes.
everyone is like the sample is still.
You know what, let's try it and and if I fail, I know what I have to do, okay? So actually, if you want also to change the plate layout, by default now I'm showing 96 well, but if you have other well format, you can change that into this setting plate layout. Just going to reduce the number of well. Macro recording will still work the same. So
Standard play like standard.
Yes.
Because otherwise you could have just like adjusted the rows you want by changing the plate.
yeah, no, it won't work because it's, yeah, I'm reading the well ID, so let's try that. Hyperstack.
Yeah, I got it.
Oop, is it there?
Well, I do it. I mean,
Yeah.
I obviously did it right already, but it just I wrote it myself.
Yeah, having the well ID.
Yes, it's working. Nice.
Yeah, that's cool.
So obviously like, here you could maybe,
This is sweet. This is
Yeah, to check that the cropping.
yeah. And then, so you can pan with this hand icon, and I think they also tell you can use, yeah, press space bar, exactly. Okay, no, in my case, not working. I see. And also one functionality, Joran asked me now when I was doing this plugin, Plate Montage Maker, if you have multiple dimension, it can be convenient to go directly to one dimension. So that's the option of this show Hyperstack browser. So then when it's going to show it, you get this small window, which is not something you click OK and disappear. It's like something you keep on the side, and you can enter which dimension to go. You click set, and the slider is going to go to where you want. You don't need to adjust every single slider. So actually, I don't remember exactly where I put it for, only for this one, because for the other one, the normal hyperstack, that could also be handy, but yeah. Okay, I think with this, I kind of finished what I wanted to show you. Yeah.
Can I ask you one question?
Yeah.
Now, when you mentioned plate layout, so I guess you have some default plate layout.
Yeah, I can show you, yeah. So these are
What about
the...
custom ones?
Yeah, I don't have a solution yet.
But right now, basically, the Acquifer datasets from the layouts which are not conventional.
So what do you have in mind, for instance?
So Christina has two-dimensional molds, and we typically specify, okay, the structure is here, top left corner, the structure is top right, and we say the periodicity to the machine, right? So you can define any shape you want. And this is then basically, it acquires the images. So now my question is, I guess this definition of a plate, the machine does, I don't know if it says it anywhere in the metadata, and then would it be kind of opened by this plugin?
I will need to see the files, I think, to see what the well name is the machine is giving them.
It gives normal, so we were doing, I don't know, 4x4, so it would basically say it would ABCD 1, 2, 3, 4.
Oh, well, then it should work.
But would it like automatically recognize as some plate layout because it's not in the default one?
Yeah, true. Now it's gonna. So yeah, it's gonna. You can basically go for the closest layout. So now you would be 6. yeah, no, well 6 is going to be 3 by 2. So you have 4 by 4.
But typically you have like several different arrays on the plate.
No, Lauren, what they are mentioning is like if there is like one is here and one is at this corner, then it won't be covered by this list, right?
Then we also, yes, this time.
Like one is at this corner, like you can imagine the rectangle, and one is at this corner and one is at this corner.
Ah, yeah, okay.
Another is in the middle. So basically they...
Yeah, you will get a lot of black space. No?
Yeah.
In
You
this.
need a custom one, kind of. Like you can customize, okay, I have this. Something like that.
So I guess the best in this case is again to use this combined hyperstack. Because this plate montage is like really for fixed stuff. I think it would be a lot of work on my side to kind of adjust it for a custom layout. But I mean, maybe I can just take some of your data if that's fine, just to have a use case of a custom layout, and I can try to find a kind of intuitive solution.
I think for you it does make sense to try to implement everything, but it would be nice if the machine would save it as a log file, like if it was a custom well layout.
Ah, yeah, yeah.
Like it saves the metadata and then you can just plug it in. You don't
Yes, probably,
basic
yes.
component, right?
Yeah, that's a good idea. But yeah, I guess I need to see the data and the file name, how they're named, and yeah. So I'm pretty much done. Let me just go through the slides. Well, maybe just a small recap because I gave some tips, so maybe you didn't get everything. So the plate layout, I said you can adjust. Yeah, don't rename your image file if you don't want to lose your metadata, and the plugin actually rely on it. The display mode for the channel, so either this color where you have separate color or overlay, this composite. Channel lookup table that you can customize. Yeah, duplicating the virtual stack.
Should be also possible to add a scale to all of them, right?
Scale bar?
Yeah.
In which plugin? All of them or?
Yeah, or if you want to maybe you compare different, like if you have stuff that grows differently.
Actually, I think the plugins should automatically set the scale, at least in the Hyperstack. So normally you don't have to do yourself the conversion, you can go directly to this add scale bar and it's going to be the good size. Let me try it again. Well, here we crop some, stop.
But it still should,
Yeah.
scale should be incorrect even after cropping.
If the saving kept the metadata, I'm not so sure. What does it say here? 924.
No, I think it says.
I will check, but I think on the uncropped it should. Yeah, I can think about
But
that.
in the original data, the scale is set, right?
Normally, yes.
So it would be making sense if it's cropping and fixed, right?
Yes. Or maybe it's just the. Why is not? Yeah, I will check that. That's a good question. And so I could have like a tick box add scale bar. Yeah. It's just I'm trying to keep the number of parameters low because the graphical interface is kind of crowded already. And like the scale bar is not something you do for figure, but in an analysis and stuff, it's not like, yeah. So I will check for this cropping use case if it's why it's not happening. So I mentioned the macro recording and the macro commands that are available, and the documentation. Yeah. So actually I'd prepare an online short survey, but I actually need internet for that, and I think my phone was not really getting proper signal. Let me try. Oh, it seems it's working. So if you try to go on this, if you scan this code or you go to this URL, then you would be prompt like a few questions about how you use the update side, like I think for question, and if you have specific feedback. Any other question in the meantime?
I was just wondering about the import window layout, because it's quite wide, you know, and sometimes I have a problem that it's kind of cutting off.
Yes. So the interface of the plugin, which is quite large. Yeah, for this actually it's kind of a limitation of Fiji. That's why I did this kind of left and right, because by default it's going to be vertical. And so one tip I can give you on small screens, you can change the default font size of the menu, and it's also going to reduce then the font of the plugins. I think it in edit option appearance, and you have this font size. So let's say now we're going to go for, let's see, or either the font size or the GUI scale. Maybe if I put 0.8, probably I need to restart, yes.
Yeah, I mean, because also the create or whatever is the button that you click is on the right, lower right
Yes.
at the end, and so you always have to kind of,
Yes.
maybe if that would be moved, then maybe it would be easier if you don't have to select everything on the right, then maybe that's the creation.
So unfortunately, I cannot move the OK button. It's kind of Fiji functionality that is always on the top, no, bottom right. Let me see now if it's a bit smaller. Yeah, not so much actually. Yeah. Yeah, I don't have really, you need a larger screen basically.
We connect remotely to our imaging PC, and so you have like a window like that, and we are struggling to actually like just find the button.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, sorry. Or if you know, like you don't use the full plate, you can use another plate layout, so it's kind of reducing this window size. I don't know. But I had this issue also sometime, like when testing the plugin. So yeah, fortunately, I don't have a quick solution for that. Okay, so if there is no other question, I think now you can go on.